The Mariners Content Creator Spotlight continues as I sit down with community builder, researcher, and writer Jage of the Jage Page. Let's sail.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, March 1st, 2024. This is Tidy Gonzalez for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn, that's LOCKDON, to get yourself started. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And this is episode 4 of the Mariners Content Creator Spotlight. Let's just get right into it. I'm here with Jage, whose Mariners content mostly resides on Twitter at the Jage Page, but he's also contributed over at Dome and Bedlam and has been a big proponent of bringing the Mariners fan community closer together. And if you need a detailed summary of Jerry DiPoto's radio appearances or a fairly easy to understand breakdown of the Mariners RSN situation, Jage has you covered. He does a lot of the heavy lifting on that stuff, and it's much appreciated. So Jage, thanks so much for being here. How's it going?
It's good, man. Good day here today. Seeing Cole Young going deep, man. It was a good day to be able to watch the Mariners baseball, and things are going well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. I've been enjoying the streams, the free streams that they've been doing. It seems like that's more of a test for next year. That's what I've been told. So I don't know if they're going to be doing it again. I think it was kind of a 2-day trial, but I enjoyed those. It's always nice to be able to watch more Mariners baseball. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's going to give us a little bit more spring training baseball, I'm fine with. I mean, these are ABs we didn't realize we were going to be able to see until a couple of days ago, and being able to see, even Johnny Carmelo with a single today, Cole Young with the bomb, Brian Anderson going Oppo Taco. It was a good day. So
Luis Arias with a triple, like after the discourse on Twitter today.
If his shoulder was 100%, it was probably a home run.
Fair. Moving on. So I want to know, how did your Mariners fandom begin?
Yeah. So believe it or not, it's super odd that a kid from Connecticut would see Ken Griffey Jr. and think he's the coolest guy on the planet. So I played baseball as a kid. I played center field as well. I wasn't a lefty, but I still could recognize the most beautiful swing in the game when you could see it. And honestly, one of the first Mariners memories I have is actually the double. Just coming home from school, putting on the game, and putting on ESPN, just seeing that play and seeing the crowd and seeing the Kingdom go nuts. And then obviously, again, favorite player being the kid. That's really what tied me in. And it's been a long journey, but those early memories lasted a long enough time that I'm still here regardless of the ups and downs.
So how did you get started in the community? What drove you to the community?
Yeah. So actually, there was a bit of a 10-year break, unfortunately. Realistically, I actually, my Twitter anniversary was 4 years ago, or 14 years ago, a couple of days ago. But I worked in sports for 10 years. So I was always able to be a bystander. I really couldn't contribute. And, once I finally left actually having sports as a career, I felt more comfortable and more empowered to be able to speak online. So realistically, I read Lookout Landing in the early days, dating back to Sullivan, and then obviously the guys that are over at Dome and Bedlam now, continued on with obviously Meg and then the current group, and then seeing you guys kind of burst on the scene here with Locked On and knowing a little bit of your past, really you were a lot of people that I had originally, in a sense looked up to. Really enjoyed being around the conversations and the comments, but I really felt like I finally can contribute. And again, memes and Photoshops are fun, but they're not always necessarily professional, I think is a good way to put it. And it made it difficult when I was in sports. So when I finally got the chance and was able to move into a career where I was a little bit more free online, I really wanted to be as involved as I possibly could and really continue to try to bring the group together.
Some of your contributions on Twitter require you to do quite a bit of research into stuff that, frankly, a lot of fans don't think about or don't want to think about, like with the RSN stuff, like I mentioned earlier. Um,
Mhm.
is it just as simple as, someone has to do it? Or does that stuff actually interest you and appeal to you?
I think it's a bit of both. It's my role was very revenue based for the 10 years that I was working in the industry, and so from my perspective, I can really understand the net profits and the net revenues that kind of come from everything. And so from my perspective, when you hear these comments from leadership, especially when it comes to payroll and not necessarily spending, and kind of trying to do as much of an apples to apples comparison as you can. It's not necessarily easy. I was primarily in college athletics. But at the same time, you kind of get a gist of, X amount of dollars are applied to sponsorship, X amount of dollars come from ticketing and merchandise and concessions, and X amount of dollars come from TV rights.
Mm.
A lot of in college athletics, it's actually much more prominent and visible, especially lately with all the realignment, right? And the schools moving around and seeing how much money they're making. So when you hear about what kind of happens with the RSN, it's a bit of someone got to do it from a standpoint of I want to be able to. I don't like using the term educate because I feel like it's just as simple as going and looking some stuff up. But at the same time, I want to try to explain it as simply as possible and try to make it easy for people to read through because it's dry, it's boring. Again,
Mhm.
nobody wants to hear, oh, my incoming revenues for multimedia rights are going to be down 20%, so we can't up payroll. No one wants to hear that. But at the same time, it is important to at least understand that stuff, whether or not it's an excuse we want to hear and whether or not we believe that it's a real reason for why they're not spending, which again, that's up for interpretation. It's still important to kind of, understand how to direct your feelings, especially when they're in a negative way, which has
Mm.
unfortunately been a lot of the offseason.
So you've already touched upon this a little bit, but how did you find your niche in the community, and how did you kind of figure out, like, all right, this is what I want to do. This is the kind of content that I want to create.
Yeah, I think a big part of it too was wanting to allow a space where anybody can kind of contribute and come in and kind of ask. Listen, I'm by no means an expert. I'm not going to pretend like I'm some, Fangraphs analytical king. I'm good at being able to go search and shout out Fangraphs. I pay for a sub. But regardless, the big thing for me is that I want to be able to, again, help use a simple way of explaining advanced stuff.
Mm.
Whether it's as simple as an F war, or, whether we're diving into XWOBA or anything that we want to talk about, it's important for me to try to make it so that anybody can kind of get involved. And then again, when people kind of slide into the comments and want to discuss, it's all good faith. I always put out that, as much as I can, that a big thing for me is I want to have a conversation. I'm open to hear what you have as an opinion. I'm willing to change my mind. I don't want to get mad at you. I don't want to get frustrated. And I think that's refreshing. I don't want to say that Twitter is some horrible place all the time, but it can be aggressive out there, especially for people that have firm opinions. And I think the better way to grow a fan base is through open dialogue where we can trust that we can have a conversation, disagree, and be all right on it, as
Yeah.
opposed to it getting into mudslinging in the end.
Right. And like I mentioned earlier, bringing the community closer is very important to you. Why is that exactly? Because that is very refreshing to see.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's because I tried my best to not really close myself off to anybody, right? So I've at times I've subbed for other people that are on the community, whether it's you guys, obviously, whether it's Jason Churchill, whether it's Dome and
Mm.
Bedlam, whether it's Lookout Landing. I try to absorb as much as I can. And I really respect a lot of the people that work in this community as well, and especially people that use it as their careers. Like that's something that is extremely important. And so
Mm.
for me, trying to find a way that it's less tribal, I think became really important for me because again, listen, like I want to celebrate when the Mariners are a successful team with as
Right.
many people as possible. I don't want to be, I don't want to be happy that I won the way that I thought we would. I would love to win the way you think we would, or the way that Lookout Landing thinks we will, or anywhere else. That's important for me.
Mm.
So, I try to push that because I think it's good that we have so many people in this community that contribute such great work. And really it's you can pick people that you prefer to read and listen to.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that people that you don't read or listen to aren't putting out good content or good analysis or understanding that maybe, you guys might not be covering that week. It's good to
Right.
see from everybody. So for me, it's more of a well-rounded knowledge, getting a better perspective, and then trying to formulate your own opinion based on honestly what I learned from a lot of you guys.
More from my conversation with Jage of the Jage Page in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. With football officially in the books and some time before baseball gets underway, why don't you try your hand at betting on some hoops? Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKDON. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on the 4th episode of the Mariners Content Creator Spotlight. I'm here with Jage from the Jage Page on Twitter. So Jage, what are your main objectives with creating content?
Yeah, so kind of similar to a tweet today. I'm never going to pretend to take myself too seriously. I'm always going to try and present it as professionally as I can, and I want to make it digestible for everybody, right? Like, when I first kind of had the idea to go through the process of listening to Jerry's radio show and kind of documenting it. Not everybody has the option to be able to listen to the radio, or they're at work, or they're driving, or they're somewhere that's not Seattle where they don't have easy access to the radio. Just a quick shot. I mean, one thing that I really truly love about it is, I don't want necessarily my writing to be, or my tweets to be, something that you just look at and you go, okay, cool, sweet, I saw it, that's fun. Honestly, it means more to me when I see the bookmarks, because from my perspective, I'm putting out something that either A, you don't agree with, and you're holding that for ammo later, and that's fine. I'm excited to have that. Or B, you go, actually, that's a great point, but I want to read that and I want to revisit it later. So for me, I think my biggest driving point for my content is never taking yourself too seriously, making it easy to consume for everybody, quick and simple, something you're not going to forget. And then again, honestly, just poke fun at us. We're a tragically fun franchise, I think is a great way to put it. And, if you're going to take it too seriously all the time, just remember it's baseball. It's a game. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun. It's heartbreaking at times, but when you can laugh and make fun of us and make jokes and have fun with it, as long as you're not attacking people, it's a blast. So those are kind of my biggest points for contribution.
Yeah, it's a game at the end of the day, and I feel like, especially on Twitter, a lot of people take it a little too seriously and go a little too far, especially during games.
I have no idea what you're talking about. No.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, certain co-hosts of mine wouldn't know anything about that either. Not at all.
You have a co-host, Ben, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's Ben.
Yeah. It's Ben. Totally Ben.
He's crazy during games.
Yeah. So. You're very well known for your memes, for your memeage on Twitter. Do you have a favorite Mariners meme?
Oh man. It's an oldie but goodie, and it's not mine. I'm gonna have to find it too. There is a GIF that was made of Brad Miller eating asparagus.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I don't even, honestly, I truly don't even know the reason behind it, but just the picture of him chomping down on the asparagus. Or also there was the one with just Seager and forgot what dance he was doing, but it was basically just him shaking his big old rump, and it's also a blast. Those are probably my favorites that I've seen all time. But also one of my comments that I think really helped me kind of take off a little bit last year from a follower count standpoint, when Pitching Ninja actually put up the that pitch from Matt Brash that basically sent Jose Ramirez to the shadow realm.
Oh yeah.
There was a comment that I threw in that he actually retweeted, and that actually, I'm pretty sure that was the first day I was like, oh, this is fun when I can actually give some feedback and not be worried about getting yelled at by my bosses.
So shame on me for going however long we've gone so far and not asking you about that mullet. Can you tell us a little bit more about the history of the mullet?
Yeah. So believe it or not, the mullet actually started because of Robbie Ray. And a couple of other players, if I'm not mistaken, that year were kind of doing the same thing. And when we got hot coming down the playoff stretch in 2022, which I'm sure we'll get to that story here soon as well. It felt like the moment that I, cut the hair to buy in to what was going on. They had just gotten Castillo. Things were looking hot. We were feeling really, really good about ourselves. It was something that I wanted to feel like I was, a part of the team, as silly as that sounds. But hey, we won a playoff series out of it. And, the team broke the streak, and obviously seeing Cal's home run to get us in, and, all that stuff, that's kind of where it all spawned from. I had a wedding in the middle that unfortunately we had to take a hiatus, but fortunately my wife is absolutely wonderful and has actually allowed me to keep this ever since the day after our wedding. So today I actually got cleaned up a little bit. It was a lot grosser earlier, but now we're back to classy.
There we go. So Colby gets on to me all the time about mentioning that, I was at the playoff series in Toronto. First playoff series for the Mariners in 21 years. You were also at that series, however.
Yeah, right next to you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you just so happened to accompany me to game one of that series. What do you remember about that day?
I remember the first inning being really exciting, and then the next 8 innings being very, very quiet. And that was very nice. I think you and I kind of throughout the game just said it was the most casual, dominant performance I had seen in person of a pitcher on the mound. Unfortunately, I didn't get any chances to ever see Felix pitch, but Castillo just went out there and went about his business, just shut everybody down. And again, we got Cal's home run on the first. Things felt great. And then I also remember getting yelled at.
That did happen. In the first inning, after Gino's RBI.
Yeah. And it was funny. It was very clear they knew I was not from Toronto, which was bizarre. And they decided to let me know that they didn't appreciate that I was not from Toronto, I think is a very good way to put it.
Right. But we had a fun time. We had a fun time, you and I. That was a very fun night. I wish that you were able to stay for game 2, because Keith and I had a hell of a time that night.
I was going to say, I still remember driving back and getting home and kind of watching part of the game and just sitting there being like, it was absolutely the meme of I've made a terrible mistake. I'm just sitting at home, we're down, and I'm like, well, at first I'm like, oh, God, I'm so glad I came home. No, I was not.
You've played the game. You had a very interesting high school baseball playing experience. You had an interesting teammate or two. Would you be willing to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me preface, played on a tremendous high school baseball team with tremendous talent.
And you were the star. You were the face of the team.
Star's a word for it. I think I would say that I had 0 career varsity hits. So yeah, starish. Let's say starish.
Face of the team.
But no, I was very lucky to be able to play with a lot of really talented kids and a bunch of guys that went D1. And I was a center fielder. So again, it was more my defensive prowess that kept me on the team more than my offensive prowess. But I really didn't get many chances to show that defensive skill set. Because I had, fortunately, Matt Harvey, the Dark Knight, former pitcher for the Mets, obviously several other franchises, at the time was our ace. Our number 3 if I'm not mistaken at that point. Maybe he was our number two. Number two or our number three was Jesse Hahn, also a current big league pitcher. He's actually rehabbing. He signed with the Dodgers, I believe, for this offseason, and he will be hopefully making it in their bullpen, but bounced around from, I think he was drafted by Tampa, played a little bit for Oakland, San Diego. Big lanky kid, has great velocity, really good breaking pitch. Incredibly difficult to square up. So honestly, batting practice was a blast for us because, honestly, if you could ever get a hit off them, we knew we were good. Well, we weren't worried about who we were going to end up playing because we were playing against them. Ironically, never got to cross paths with him, unfortunately. But Mariner legend and recent roster member and recent opposing pitcher Dominic Leone actually ended up playing for my rival high school. And unfortunately, he was a freshman when I was already on my way out. But yeah, we had a nice little pocket of really good baseball players in Southeastern Connecticut for a few years. Bunch of kids that were actually in a rival high school as well. A couple of them got drafted, one by the Astros too. So it was a good group. One of our guys did get drafted by the Mariners, a 47th round pick, if I'm not mistaken, back in 2011. Got up to A ball, but I believe that's where it ended.
Mariners legend, nevertheless.
Correct. Yes.
Yes. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Here with Jade for episode 4 of the Mariners Content Creator Spotlight series. So now let's talk some ball. Let's talk about the Mariners. What are your expectations for 2024?
Yeah, I think they're a little bit more evolving right now, especially with seeing some stuff in spring, and then obviously understanding kind of what's going on with Urias' shoulder, and you really can't carry him on the roster if he can't play defense. With Mitch Garver and Mitch Haniger on the roster, you really don't have space for a third, for the most part, DH first bat. So with him being out, my initial expectation is it's probably going to be Haggerty and Moore at the end of the roster, but at the same time, and again, I tried not to get, too price or prospect typed or anything along those lines. Jerry's made mention already a couple of times about Cole Young, Tyler Locklear as well. I'm not saying that either one of them are going to break camp with the team. It's also not going to surprise me if they show up a little bit earlier than I think any of us expect, especially if they go down and start, and let's say they want to get aggressive with Cole and they just push him straight into Arkansas to start the year. I mean, if he goes down there and, he's batting, 320, he's running a 400 OBP, he's walking well, he's not striking out much, he doesn't look overpowered. And it's not crazy to think we could see him in 2024. So, but for a team perspective, given the parameters of what the organization was given, similar to a tweet that I said today, where, you can want the Mariners to spend money to fix the team and understand that that's not going to happen because that's not how the organization is operating. So from my perspective, within the parameters that the organization was given, basically run it back with what you got or try to create something different. I think they did the best they honestly could. I'm not really sure what else they could have been able to do. I think we've discussed maybe potentially Max Kepler. I know that is a Colby favorite. But even then you look there and go, is the only way you're going to get Max Kepler by not having Ty France? Right. So from my perspective, it's, I think they did a good job. I do think they're very similar to last year's team. But I think there's more variance, which honestly, I'm more comfortable with this year. I think this team has a higher ceiling than last year's team. I think this team also has a significantly lower floor than last year's team. So realistically, for a lot of fans, I think this is kind of what you want to see in this year in the Dipoto service regime, right? Especially with both of them under lame duck contracts. I think it's really important that you have more variance because you're going to get a true answer of which direction the franchise wants to go. If this team comes out this year and drops 70 wins, we're going to see changes because I really don't see a way that we won't. And I think they'll be significant. But we roll out and win 90 to 95 games, you know, those guys have some leverage. It's up to them if they want to stay. At that
Mhm.
point, it's not really going to be a negotiation. So,
Mhm.
personally, I think this is a playoff team. I think it's going to be tough. I personally think that the big issue for them this year is that, Houston continued to just be Houston. They're just better. And I think as a benefit for the Mariners, I do think Texas is down. I say that now, and they're going to probably run a 400 runner or batters with runners in scoring position stat for the first 2 months of the year again, and go out and win 50 games in the first 3 months, like that, knowing of how things went last year. But
Right.
no, I think the team is in a good space for this upcoming year. But again, my big concern is if this team that they've built isn't it, there probably isn't anything that can come up to make a difference, which means they really don't have a path to get better if this isn't it, at least in 2024,
Mhm.
because they're not going to trade big name prospects for short term goals. And that's a good thing. They shouldn't be doing that, especially in the position that they're in. But I think realistically, at the end of the day, it's a playoff team. I'd like to see us win a series or two. Again, everybody says win the World Series or bust. Give me to an ALCS. You give me to an ALCS, I'm in a happy space. And honestly, if we can win the division, I mean that would be the biggest thing. You got to
Mhm.
conquer the Giant. You got to beat Houston, take the division from them. The moment they do that, I think I'll feel significantly more confident in this team's, future from what it is from right now.
Any predictions you're sitting on or want to throw out there?
Hmm. Do my wishy-washy bets count? Because
Go for it.
I did throw down a sizable bet for the Mariners plus 2,000 World Series odds. I also took Julio as MVP.
There we go.
I truly actually believe in the MVP one.
Yeah.
I think Julio's on a mission. It would not in the least bit surprise me if, again, barring health, Julio goes and drops a 7-8 win season.
Mhm.
Again, he's coming into press conferences this year being upset about having a down year. He
It was
was
like a
30-30 and a 5 WAR player and,
yeah,
fringe gold glove defense.
yeah.
Like, come on. So I do think I would be shocked if Julio is less than top 3 for the MVP, barring
Mhm.
health. I think the Mariners finish with 2 top 5 Cy Young contenders. I don't think either one of them will win because
Uh-huh.
I think they're going to steal votes from each other. But I do think 2 of Logan, George, and Luis will finish in the top 5. I think the Mariners are going to probably go. You know what? Give me 90. We'll go 90 and 72 again. I don't think we're going to win the division. I think we'll come couple of games up short, but I do think we'll make the playoffs. So that would be my overall team prediction for the year.
Any playoff games being played in Seattle?
Ooh, uh, huh, 2.
Okay. All right.
And I
2.
think unfortunately they get eliminated at home.
That would well, it depends on are they hosting the
Yeah,
wild
I
card?
again, I think I do think that it could be a similar scenario like it was in 2020 where we're going to be wild card 3,
Okay.
because the East is very very good, and so is Houston. So I think the Central is going to cannibalize itself in all. If you haven't seen the Crest report, the
Mhm.
entire AL and NL Central will finish at 81 and 81.
That's right. That's right. And the
That's right.
Mariners will win how many games was it?
It was 109. We will
Mm,
actually finish 58 games in front of Houston.
think that's a bit low, but
You got to
projection
take in.
models, they're not
There's
perfect.
we have to leave some margin of error.
Right. Exactly.
It's an
Exactly.
exact science. It
So
says it
so,
on the graph.
so exactly. So um I guess so if they're going on the road for the wild card series, but you say they're going to host 2 playoff games, they're at least making it to game 4 of the ALDS in your mind. All right.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that.
And again, I think it's going to be something along the lines where we're either going to wind up playing potentially a very good Baltimore team.
Mm,
It's
yeah,
just, again, it's pitching wins, but you still got to hit. And it's just
mhm.
that whole lineup, top to bottom, is,
It's really
is,
good.
is good.
And
And,
now
and
they might have
again,
some money to play with
oh,
finally.
and that's
So
the thing.
yeah,
If that sale goes final in April,
yeah,
like, I mean, they can go get anybody they want. They're not running a crazy payroll right now, and they're going to have
yeah,
hedge fund owners, running the team. Like, and they're set up to be good for a very, very, very long time.
yeah, yeah.
I think Baltimore is going to be the roadblock for the Mariners for at least a handful of years. Outside of Houston, I think Houston, Baltimore,
Mhm.
Seattle, Texas probably have the brightest futures of the teams in the American League right now.
So we do this thing every year called Flag Week. I'm sure you're familiar with it. We eliminate the Julios and the JPs, the very obvious players from the equation here, and more so focus at the on the middle levels and lower levels of the major league roster to pick basically our guys, the guys that we're rocking with this year. Who's a guy that you look at on this roster right now and you go, "That's my guy. I believe in him."
Yeah. So a couple of appearances from some relievers have made me kind of waver a little bit.
Mm.
I'll throw out the names Jackson Coar. We're both on the Coar train.
Yeah, the
Um,
the Jackson Coar trade with the
that's
Braves. Yeah,
that's right.
the best JK traded in that deal.
I will also say I'm really intrigued with Carlos Vargas.
Yeah.
I think he's lost a little bit of shine. I said this last night, just because it was earlier in the offseason. And again, sequencing for the offseason, the Mariners just don't understand the concept of sequencing, nor do they apparently care because this is not the first time this has gone
Nope.
this way.
Nope.
But if I'm going to say a pitcher, again, it's a little bit of a cop out because it is in our starting rotation. Um, I'm really high on Bryce. I really think Bryce is going to have a great season. My only concern has been the report that we saw today that they are trying to limit the splitter a little bit, try to limit him a little bit in the spring because they want to be able to keep his pitch count low. So I hope that's just precautionary stuff. I hope that there's not a reason for that we're not aware of. But I
Mhm.
think Bryce is going to really break out. To be honest, again, during the offseason, I said there were two pitchers that obviously I think everyone knew if they were going to trade, it was going to be either Bryce or it was going to be Brian. I was preferring to keep Bryce more so because I just don't know what Woo's health history is going to be moving forward. If
Mhm.
Woo's healthy, Woo probably has the better ceiling,
Mhm.
but I think Bryce is going to be a guy that's going to be able to give you 180 innings every year, as long as they take care of him. So from a pitching perspective, Bryce, hitting wise, I mean, man, I really, really want to believe Samad Taylor can
Ooh,
make this roster.
I like it.
I really do. He's if I'm not mistaken, he still has options.
Yeah. Yeah.
They can keep him down in
Oh,
Tacoma.
yeah, yeah.
I think they're gonna run with, again, as I said, Haggerty and Moore, which is fine. Sam deserves to be on the team. Sam's solid. He's a quality player. I think there's more of a known with Sam, and there's
Sure.
more of a ceiling with Samad. So I can't really put it on him, but I'm going to say this. I don't think Luke Raley is a mirage. I
Mhm.
also don't think Luke Raley is exactly what he was the first 6 weeks of the season last
You mean
year.
he's not gonna be a 170 WRC plus the entire season?
No, I think he'll be a very nice 169.
Ah.
But
Nice.
no, that's a good one.
Uh,
That's going to get cut. So,
it's
uh,
it's not.
Oh, that's right. I love to hear that. Oh, what a great show. No, I honestly think there is a very good possibility Luke's going to be a 115, 120 guy. And
Mhm.
again, you're going to have him for 5, 6 years. He's Terry Tate offensive linebacker running around on the field, and he's got some pop. I liked that move. I think we all agree though, because this is just how it works. And yes, we're not going to dive into the every Mariner that leaves is better elsewhere comment. Jose Caballero is absolutely putting up a 3-war season in Tampa, and there ain't a thing any of us can do about it.
Right. Four win Jose Caballero in 188 games. As
Oh, yeah,
FanGraphs
that's right. Yeah, I
projected.
think that was
Yeah.
all. It's funny. Again, people said these Crest rankings and projections are
Right.
terrible, and I say,
Sure.
FanGraphs stole Caballero's projections from me.
Yeah.
Then they
Those were
realized
stolen
they got
from the
caught,
Crest
and
project.
they
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
adjusted it after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We're gonna play a lot of playoff games, 26 of them to be precise.
He's also gonna get traded a bunch where he's playing double days. Like,
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's actually gonna play 170 games this actual
He,
regular season.
he's gonna become like a super Jacob Nottingham of just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
I want it. I want
Yeah,
that.
love it, love it. Well, Jage, thanks so much for hopping on here. Where can everybody find your work?
Yeah. So occasional scribe over at the Dome and Bedlam website. You can find me on Twitter at the Jage Page. Realistically, just stick it there. It's really where I want to talk baseball the most. It's the easiest way. Throughout the season, I'll be covering Jerry DiPoto's show on ESPN 710. So you'll see those recaps coming out right after those are done. Again, I try to be able to grab every time we see somebody that's going to be talking on the radio that might be interesting for us. Try to grab some little screenshots or some notes there, here and there. But honestly, guys, if you ever want me to be able to cover something, just tag me online. If I got the time, I'll try to put in the work for you guys and put up a little Cliff Notes version of whatever you want.
Cool. Thanks so much for everything you do, and thanks so much for hopping on.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
And that's going to do it for our show. Thank you again to Jage for taking the time out to talk with me. And thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. I've been your host, Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and my co-host Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.